I always like
Okay, we call the meeting to order. Special meeting of council for Wednesday, May the 27th, 2015. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, motion to approve. Councillor Coulson, seconded by Councillor Hain. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Correspondence. Minister Corley Oakes regarding ministerial order under section 129(3)A of the Community Charter for a quorum of 3, as well as included District Council's request or letter requesting consideration under that section.
Move receipt.
Move receipt by Councillor Hames, seconded by Councillor Coulson. Discussion. Councillor Coulson.
Just a question on the final paragraph. Where the minister speaks to council will not be setting any overall strategic or policy direction or making new decisions, so forth. Regarding the comment on strategic policy direction, hoping to have clarification either from ourselves or perhaps the minister on just where that bar is for strategic decision making, and where I think it was like with the foothills, there was an agenda item on the last meeting for receiving basically a contract for cost recovery and such. Just trying to establish frames of reference on what they would consider strategic policy direction.
Okay. Tree?
Certainly the mayor and I discussed, what was going to be coming from the ministry, and as well, I've talked with ministry staff since then. We're going to have a close relationship in the next couple of months because they will be providing us with assistance if there's any questions just like that about an agenda item. We've also discussed with them and got confirmation on different types of voting. So when it's normally a council of the normal size, it's a simple majority. The same applies when it's a council of 3. It's a simple majority. 2 is what's required. So the question comes up if there were any supermajority votes coming up. What do we do in that case? And so they would like us to consult with them, and that's why they've been asking us what type of business would be coming up in the next couple of months. So we'll be, I'll be in contact with the staff there on a regular basis as we're preparing the agenda, and we do have the outstanding questions still on the one that was on the last agenda, and we didn't include it in this agenda.
Okay. And sorry, so you mentioned supermajority. Is that like the 5 of 7, or?
Yeah, there's some things that represented 2/3 and that sort of aspects. So.
Yeah, there's in the act, there's not that many, but there are some where it talks about a 2/3 vote. There's some where it talks about a majority of all of council, and so whether, and that's one where it applies even if they're not all there. So for example, and for an OCP, that is an example of one where it requires. So there's several different variations of what we call supermajority techniques.
Right. Oh, that's good to hear, just so we'll stay on board with
Absolutely.
The directive presented to us.
Yeah. With regards to the mention of the foothills item, because there was some concern whether or not that might create a legal or financial liability, that's why it wasn't carried over from last Monday's agenda to this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Any other further questions? In terms of the letter itself, there's some items there that they would like us to address as we are able, such as the appointment of an interim CAO, which is on the agenda tonight. Also with regards to the aspect of what they referred to as ensure positive council staff relations and mechanisms in place for disputes, etc. Again, another item that's on the agenda tonight. In terms of the discussions with not only the minister, most of our discussions have occurred through Gary Padgett's office. So from that standpoint there, they've been keeping track of the issue going over a number of weeks, so they were familiar, and in that respect everything acted fairly quickly with regards to the minister. So. Anything further? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, item 5. Mayor and Council verbal updates. Councillor Coulson.
Yeah, sure. So we've been embroiled in a lot of negativity, controversial type things, and I know on our list of things to do we have a look at the procedural bylaw, and can't help but wonder if we should add a section to our council meetings where we focus on something positive. What made me think of that, I was coming down the road here the other day and I saw the broom busters had been hard at work up at the intersection there, and thought, that's great stuff. I don't know how well publicized that is, how much recognition folks like that get for that work, and thought, should we have a little segment that features stuff like that? So, there's the Legion, the Rotary Club, the Fire Department, the Parks and Rec Committee, the CB PAC, just something that recognizes something good and positive.
Okay.
Something for future consideration, I would suggest.
Okay. Any further?
Nope, that's fine.
Councillor Haynes?
Nothing to report.
Okay. For myself, one item that unfortunately happened on Saturday night, I believe. The Harrises at the bottom of Sebastian, their house had a substantial fire, and as a result, they're residents of 50 years. They're looking at how and possibly they can rebuild down there. One of the things in talking to their daughter, they had good things to say with regards to the response of the fire department, so they wanted to express their thanks to the fire department, recognizing that they could have lost the whole house. Looking at it, they definitely lost the second story of the structure, but there's some thoughts that they will be able to rebuild at least the ground floor and maybe be able to reoccupy the house based on that. Like I said, 50-year residents, and it was simply a case apparently of moss on the roof, dead moss on the roof, spark coming from a wood stove out onto the roof. So it started as something small there and went up fairly quick in terms of it. Second thing for the council to consider at some point would be the recording, recognizing that there is within the financial plan the discussion of recording the meetings visually to supplement what Councillor Colson's been doing. But something else that council might want to consider is the recording of at least the audio of both in-camera and public meetings. The aspect of interpretation, looking at a couple of times over the last number of months, amendments to the minutes based on what people said or they perceived were said. And I think audio recording wouldn't be a bad idea with regards to it. And like I said, both in-camera and public meetings. So from that standpoint there would be a record of exactly what's said. It's not a big budget item, but it's something that I just kind of put out there as something for staff to consider. Anything further? Okay, next item 5A1, with regards to 2015 by-election, in consideration of the chief election officer. Staff's put together a report detailing some of the intricacies of the chief election officer, as well as some consideration of deadlines, etc. Council, what would you like to do?
Question, if I may, on the first motion there.
There is no motion at the moment.
Okay, sorry. On the first item regarding Jimmy Folds.
Okay.
So that, sorry, I just got to find the report. So that individual works at Qualicum Beach right now?
That's correct.
So what kind of role or capacity does the assistant work at? And if this person is currently employed, I'm assuming they're unavailable during the day. So just trying to understand how that is an effective appointment.
Yeah. He's available during the day for the 3 voting days. He's available in the evening and on the weekends for the preparation work. The work that the level that the deputy does is comparable to the level of complexity that the chief election officer does. And so I'm trying to make that distinction between, we would have an office assistant, maybe copying things, and that would happen during the day. But the deputy level work would be a bit more complex, and availability is crucial during voting days because of the requirement in the voting place that there's someone there. So if one person leaves,
Yeah, it's covered.
there's a day. Generally, our experience with election preparation is, in a small organization, it's just unavoidable. A lot of the preparation time is after hours. We have other duties we're doing during the day. I'd like to say, I'd have a deputy in and we'd be doing it all during the day, but I haven't experienced that anywhere.
Okay.
Not to the extent I'd like to. Let's just say that.
Further questions, discussion, motions? Councillor
More
Folsom?
questions? So I see in 2014, you were the CEO and Ms. Graff was the deputy CEO. In 2011, Donna Smith was the CEO, and I don't see a deputy CEO. So I'm curious, how was that deputy role filled in 2011?
I believe it was the CAO. I believe Kyle was the deputy in 2011. I wasn't here, but
That would be
that's
my
my understanding.
assumption.
Okay. The reason I asked that question is I saw there was some pay in 2014 for the deputy position, but I don't see that on the 2011 details. So I was
And when you asked about those details, I mean, I didn't produce that document, I wasn't here, and I didn't peruse it, so
Right.
if it was final draft of the document, I can't ascertain that. But the dollar amount, I think, did jive with the amounts that was shown as the actual. Okay, so, yeah, so it should be.
No, it was just more from, was it an in-house thing or was it farmed out in 2011? Trying to get an idea if it's a similar type of structure that would be happening this time if Mr. Folds was the deputy CEO.
Yeah, the goal always is to have someone who's got experience either as a CEO somewhere else or as a deputy CEO. And Mr. Folds has experience as a deputy CEO in Falcon Beach for the last election. And as well, he was key assistant to me for the 2011. He was not at the deputy level in 2011, but did a lot of work.
Okay.
Further discussion? Councillor Hain.
Yeah, sure.
I just have a concern with workload for staff. We only have one full-time senior management person now. Well, in the office, sort of not counting Fred, but I mean in the office next door.
Okay, what about Lisa?
But Lisa's the planner. I mean
Oh,
in
I
the
see.
corporate
Sorry, I see. Okay,
function.
thank you.
So I worry about the demands we would be putting on that one person. Even though on the agenda is appointing an interim CAO, it's only part-time. So I struggle with that. I worry that we're asking too much, and I worry about what the impact will be for the day-to-day operations and getting things done. Because that's already right now a bit of a struggle. So.
Councillor Folsom?
Yeah, and I'll follow up with concerns on that front too. I went back to the March 2015 CAO report. Just an example of some of the work items. There was a report to come forward on a development cost charge consideration for May 2015. Communication policy. There was a staff report and draft policy regarding release of resolutions, reports of documents, and votes quarterly from closed meetings. That was for May 2015. Procedure bylaw review, April 2015. Community signage report, April 2015. Lanceville Historical Society. There was to be a report on options for work and storage space, April 2015. So there's quite a hefty amount of work in front of staff that we're already drifting behind on. So I'd look for some guidance on, does it make sense to take even more of your time and put you in the CEO role, or consider option 2 per your report where we get external assistance?
And I I've worked elections since 1988. I've lost count how many elections I've done. But I have not worked in the model where there's a contractor. So, of course, anticipating that there would be some more questions about the contractor option than there was for the fall election. I did reach out to different municipalities that have that model. And I talked to contractors that are in the biz to get, an idea of the ballpark on the cost that I included in the report. And, there are experienced contractors out there, but the couple that I spoke to were all very clear that it was still the corporate officer who would be named as a deputy, sometimes as one of two deputies, and it was still the corporate officer who would be providing the local knowledge or oversight, reviewing the ads, reviewing the ballots. So I struggle with how much assistance that is for an additional, $10,000 on that $6,000 to $10,000 number is not, doesn't include any other costs. It's just the person. And so you still have all those other costs that are there. So, from that perspective, I didn't see a lot of return on the investment, and I know we want to operate as prudently as we can. The aspect of some of the work projects that you mentioned there, I think everybody can acknowledge that in the last few months we've had unusual circumstances. And so some of those items were consciously set aside. As well, for myself, I'm the Director of Corporate Administration. There's been no discussion with me about taking on the role of interim CAO or taking on assignments for the CAO's assignments. So I'm focusing on, getting the corporate administration work done at the same time as getting the by-election delivered. And no, it won't be easy, but I still think it's the option that I have the most confidence in. And my intention is to squeeze every penny I can out of that budget. And, so it will include bringing in office assistants when they're available, which we have done in the past to do the lower level work, which, unfortunately, as hands-on managers, we are senior managers, but we have we're unsupported in that role. So, I've got the filing too. So, it's nice if I can get the money out of the budget and get that done. So, it's still my recommendation, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, and that's something I'm trying to get an appreciation for. You mentioned bringing in support to do some of your existing roles, and so is it the kind of thing where we spend $5,000 to save $5,000, or spend $10,000 to save $5,000? So is it, even though it's a fairly sizable number, is it more effective and efficient to hire someone and let you kind of focus more on your day-to-day aspects and back or fill in the deputy role? I believe I heard you say that you would like to be the deputy if an external consultant is hired. Is that
No.
okay?
No. What I said is the external consultants I spoke to said that if in the structure they've been working with in other municipalities, that the corporate officer, my position is known as a corporate officer in the Act, the Director of Corporate Administration, would also be their deputy. So
so you would be the deputy CEO.
Or the chief elected.
Yeah, regardless.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is I haven't found a municipality where the contractor comes in or doesn't come in, whatever, they're working from outside and you just hand them the task and it's done. There's still a lot of involvement with the district staff.
So there's been no municipalities that basically sub the whole thing out and hands off. They call consultants.
Well, I didn't talk to New Westminster. They hadn't had, they were paying like $41 an hour, so theirs was based on hourly rate for their contractor. So I thought this was out of the ballpark when you get into an hourly rate. It's a labor of love delivering an election, and it's not, it just isn't something that can be done economically at that.
Right. And sorry to keep
One
rounding.
more follow-up.
And so just so the public isn't misled here, like, when I'm working overtime on an election, I'm not paying overtime for that. So when I talk about, the contractor making $41 an hour, the one we talked to was Oak Bay, and theirs was about $10,000. The fellow who does a lot of the school district ones, he did Clueless by-election, and he was pretty positive it would be in the 6,000 to 10,000 range.
So,
Yes.
right, so the fee that, this is part of my follow-up question.
Okay.
So the fee that would typically be paid to an external consultant has been absorbed in your normal remuneration package for the last election. So like the 5 to 10 grand that would typically be paid for an external consultant has been covered under.
No, I wouldn't say that.
No? Okay.
I would say that I make, if you're talking about my salary,
Yeah,
as a
so
corporate officer, I think corporate officers' salaries are set based on they might or they might not be lead and doing chief election officer role. I don't think it's incorporated into the salary because, I know many.
sorry, I misspoken then. So part of what you get paid right now, we don't pay you extra to do the CEO role.
Yes, you do.
just-
As
oh,
you
we
can see
do.
from the chart,
Yeah.
and that's a traditional historic thing in municipalities, that there's like a little honorarium that's paid to chief election officers when they're on staff. The same
Yeah.
as our staff who attend and work the election as poll clerks.
Right.
They get, $250 a day, the same as a person from outside gets $250 a day. I was paid $1,000.
Yeah.
And I think the deputies paid $750.
Right, and I did see that, but the $10,000 number you speak, that $9,000 difference, where does that get accounted for usually? Is that just absorbed in what you're paid to be our corporate administrator, and now you're just absorbing
It's
some of
absorbing
the-
me donating time to the community. I mean,
Okay.
I donate a couple hundred hours a year
Okay.
of
No.
my time.
Okay.
I get 70 hours a year in lieu of overtime. And I haven't worked in a municipality yet where I donate, and work, at least 400. I mean, it's just the nature of the job. Yeah.
Councillor Hain.
Okay, well, we do appreciate everything you do.
Yeah, and
And we do know you stay here some nights very late,
Yeah,
so
and
we
I
do
don't-
thank you for
I
that.
think I'm making big bucks on this.
Yeah, no, we recognize that. I think where Councillor Colson's coming from is in the budget that we were provided, about $6,600 went towards the CEO, the deputy CEO, and one casual person, just to put the election together. So I think what he's thinking is in the report, it says to hire an outside contractor would be between $5,500 and $10,000. Well, we really are trading apples for apples here. We either pay the $6,600 to internal staff to do it, or we hire a contractor externally to do it, is really where we're at. It's exactly the same thing when you add the numbers up.
Well, I would correct that though, because Dennis's number that he gave me of the 6,000 on the low scale, that was with our staff doing the copying, and again, still the model where I would take on the role of vetting certain things and approving certain things. So we're still doing that work.
So maybe, just because there is a concern about staff workload and pressures on you, because I don't want you to have a nervous breakdown over all this, because I do know how much time you're putting in, that maybe we could go to an outside and get some firm quotes on what this would cost to have an external person run the election. We could maybe get it back for the next council meeting, and then we know what we're dealing with. Right now, we really don't know. You had talked to some people at the RDN, so there are other people out there that do provide that service, that have the experience. So perhaps,
Well, just an update, the individual that had
Yeah.
been suggested from the RDN, I did speak with the individual themselves, and they weren't available.
No, but they're-
But as an idea,
yeah, there are others.
You may have to change your voting date, though. That's the
Okay,
only-
that was gonna
Whoever
be my
you
question.
select, you know, I mean, it's totally your choice.
Yeah.
Whoever you select will have to, you know, after the appointment,
Yes.
then set the voting date.
Yes.
And we have an issue on facility.
Yes.
Or you could change your facility. I mean, you could go to elementary school.
Yeah.
You know, that would be an added cost too.
Okay, that's a question I've got for you, though, because in the report it speaks to August 8th and it talks about working backwards from August the 8th. My understanding is that kind of looking at things in theory, if everything kind of went perfectly, theoretically you could do an election with the proper notifications and that in roughly 45 to 50 days, roughly, in theory. Not including, I guess, some of the advance time or the advertising time itself.
Yeah, I haven't seen that 45 days.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the other examples where there's by-elections occurring now, for example.
Yeah. It would depend on your municipality.
Yeah.
You know, like there's factors. Each municipality sets, you know, a council establishes your rules and how many advance voting days you have.
Yeah.
And so some of the targets, the numbers, count back from that advance voting day. The other unique things in municipalities is, you know, in some more urban places, the newspapers publish daily.
Yeah.
And so when you place your local ad, you can still meet your 2 ads 1 week apart much easier than if you're having to wait a little bit longer for newspapers. Yeah.
Okay. So if we were using and having that fixed because of the facility side of things, the August 8th day, kind of working backwards, what's the latest time we could effectively appoint the CEO? Any idea?
Well, we talked about that earlier. I think I need you need a week buffer anyway. I really think next week. You know, there was discussion about the 25th, and that required ads this week. And so it was 8th.
25th of July. Of July?
It required ads to have already been published.
Yeah, I can
and we couldn't do that. And the next weekend was a long weekend.
Yeah.
So I think you've got about a week window, but
Okay.
you know.
Okay. Okay. So, Councillor Coulson.
Of the external contractors you talked to, did you also canvass for a rough idea of their availability? Like, are these folks that are available, or?
Yeah, Dennis Brown is available. The fellow from Victoria, I did not speak to directly. That's the one that View Royal uses. And so you'd be paying, you know, travel time and stuff with him. And, yeah.
Okay. So,
Well, let me take one more stab at trying to relay what my thoughts were on your time and cost. You're not working 8 to 4 strictly on district corporate administrative roles, and then at 4 o'clock changing hats and putting on your CEO role. And so there's time in the day that you're working toward the election, of which you're compensated for by the salary you collect annually here. And then you also get the stipend for being the CEO. So if work is being sacrificed, the corporate admin work is being sacrificed to do the election role, you know, I'm kind of leaning to, you know, let's hire someone to lead that. If you're doing the support role, then so be it. Then you can backfill for what's missing from the corporate admin side. That's kind of what I'm trying to get my head around. Appreciate the dollars, and if that's the most efficient way for cost and time, given the limited staff we have, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hopefully that makes sense.
recognizing the time frame and wanting to make sure that we hit that earliest date possible.
Yeah, that's the other consideration.
Is basically what Trudy said. It kind of gives us about a week's leeway. Recognizing that one of the items on the agenda tonight is the appointment of that interim CAO, one of the other considerations I have is that liaison discussion, allocation of work, whatever we want to call it, between the CAO and Trudy, once an individual is in place for that interim CAO, so that they can have that discussion as to kind of how workload's going to work. But if in my mind, if it can happen within the week, so we still end up with that day in August, one of the possibilities, just given some time here, is why not have a discussion between the interim CAO, assuming the appointment occurs, Trudy, and establishing kind of the best thoughts between those two, recognizing the potential needs of the CAO, recognizing the small quorum here, the ability to call a special meeting to actually appoint the CEO is relatively easy. And so from that standpoint, I think we can still meet that goal, which is to have the election called as soon as possible, which is what the minister wanted. But when it comes to the standpoint of discussions with the inspector of municipalities, they also recognize our staff challenges as well, because they're well aware of those. So as long as we can kind of keep that on track time frame wise without a delay.
And meet that August 8th.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion, or do we just want to say we're going to do that? Or
Well, I think there should be a motion to, if the concern is to kind of firm up the availability and cost of an external CEO or deputy CEO, in order to make sure that we have that balance of workload. I prefer to see an actual motion directing staff to confirm the availability, but also consult with the proposed interim CAO prior to. When you said kind of a week's leeway, were you thinking from Monday or from today? Like if it was a week from now, do you think that would work?
I said, I really, I wouldn't say, it depends how whoever you appointed CEO wants to conduct the election.
Well, no, it's not so much that, because the appointment of the CEO. You said
Yes.
CEO?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were talking CAO.
No.
Too many acronyms.
CEO.
Well, certainly with regards to once we appoint the person person is independent.
That's right. They prepare
And
the
so,
calendar,
would it be an infraction on their independence if one of the questions that were asked of the individual was the ability for us to still deliver that August 8th date?
Okay. I think that's fair.
Okay.
You want to, I can set up interviews for you if you like.
Well, but it's not so much interviews for us. What I see is just that discussion between you and the proposed interim CAO to make sure workload things are taken care of, and then we, like I said, call a special meeting after that conversation has happened, and then appoint either yourself or somebody that's firmed up in terms of availability and price as the CEO.
Yeah, and sorry, just for full disclosure too, when you're comparing things, the salary or not salary, but the honorarium that we quoted for the deputy CEO, in my model of using Jimmy, it would be higher than that, because he's not a municipal employee. He's working 3 full days, and even a poll clerk is $250 a day. So the $750 would be eaten up just in a poll clerk. And so my expectation was to try to push that up, but until we know where we can cut back on some other things, I was expecting it was probably going to be a couple $1,000. It's
For the deputy role, if
definitely in this model.
Okay.
Full disclosure.
Okay. So we need a motion directing staff to contact any proposed consultants. Not sure if that's the word I want to use.
Would you like me to send out a quote to a few people, or just?
I think it would almost be a direct sourcing, couple of direct sourcings, not a proposal for broad advertising, because the time just isn't there. But then also to have that discussion with the proposed interim CAO.
And when does the interim CEO start?
The availability itself could possibly be Friday, if not first thing Monday morning.
Okay.
And that relates to a family issue.
Okay. And so, what day next week would council like to have a special meeting?
depends when you get the information.
well,
No, it's one of those things where We have to have a day where we have a meeting, and if we haven't got full information by that, we still have to make a decision going forward.
Okay, well, Monday.
Monday, we're gonna move on it.
Yeah.
Could Monday work?
It depends when I get to speak to the
Yeah, we should.
acting or interim CEO.
Yeah, no, we gotta establish it. Well, no, we don't have to specifically establish a date because we can call one with 24-hour notice and/or leaving time. Okay, so
Strive for Monday if we can.
strive for Monday if the information is available. Otherwise, in my mind, kind of the deadline is Wednesday. In that respect.
Okay.
Okay. So we need that motion.
Can I say so moved?
No.
Isn't it just number 2?
No, there was number 2, but then there's plus the discussion with the CAO with respect to shared workload. Because if we know that workload is addressed between those two, then it could be a case that we don't
Yeah.
actually engage an external consultant.
Okay.
So I move that staff contacts external consultants for price bids on the CEO role, and what would the language be? The determination of the if the August 8th calling of the election would be sufficient for the timeline presented, and have that prepared if possible before, or sorry,
Just say as soon as possible.
as soon as possible. Yeah.
And do you want to add something there about the consulting with the...
There's the interim CEO
Consult with the interim CEO with regards to workload.
staff workload balancing. Yeah.
I'm not really clear on that, like I'm asking them who's going to do what.
Yeah, like there's Councillor Colson mentioned, there's a number of reports that were requested by council, and recognize that some of those really should come to a full council as opposed to a shortened council. So it's just a case, in my opinion, of sitting down with the interim CEO and kind of going through, okay, these are the active items.
Yeah,
What-
because some of them are like planning, some of them CEO.
Right.
You know, certainly
Right.
I've got the procedure bylaw and the communication policy, but those are items we anticipated.
They're bigger policy items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if, from whatever.
Hang on.
Sorry, yes.
Does that make enough of a motion?
Regarding workload and assignments?
Yes, that'll work.
Assignment priorities?
That's an even better word with the
Can we do
priorities.
that?
Yeah.
And provide a report to council ASAP as soon as possible.
Yeah. Seconded by? Councillor Hain. Any further discussion on the motion?
No, the only other thing I was going to add, my understanding was the interim CEO we're considering has some planned vacation time and stuff, so there could be, might not be available on a full-time capacity over the next block of time, so that's where the discussion will come on balancing workload and who's doing what and how. That sounded over 30.
Noise down. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, anything further that you need, Trudy, at this point with regards to the by-election? Okay.
It's just on hold.
Yeah, we're still aiming for that August the 8th, which Costin Hall is available that day.
But I won't commit to them until
Yes.
you appoint and CEO decides.
Okay. Item 5A2, appointments to the VIRL Board of Trustees. Basically, what we're looking for is a appointee as well as an alternate.
You interested?
I'll do it. I like the library.
I move that council appoints Denise Haim as the District of Landsville representative to serve on the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board of Trustees for a term ending December 31st, 2015.
That's it. I'll second it. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
It gets a little bit strange.
It's a little, yeah, I'll say that. The alternate.
I move John Colson as the alternate to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board.
I'll second that.
And then we've got sticks, and you draw from. There's only two.
Yes or no?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'll second that. Any discussion? You know where the library is?
It's been a while.
There's a new one. Have you been in the new one?
Yeah, I've been in the new one.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Seaside Community Society Liaison.
I move the council appoint Councillor John Colson as the liaison to the Seaside Community Society.
Sure.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Appropriateness. Seconded. Discussion?
Question. How often do they meet? Sorry.
Typically once a month.
That's okay.
Although I don't know what their meeting day and time is now. I guess it's been moving around a little bit in terms of we can find that out. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion update on the April 9th motions, a variety of which there are detailed on the agenda. Just in terms of an update, and this is information that I had there on Monday night as a result of a discussion, a suggestion from QP401 and a discussion with the Labour Relations Board of British Columbia. Labour Relations Board has it's called a service called the Relationship Enhancement Program. It's a program designed to assist employers and unions in establishing and maintaining a productive and positive relationship. I had a discussion with an individual. The person in charge of the program is Grant MacArthur, Director of Mediation. But I did have, he was unfortunately out of the office, but I had a discussion with another one of the program operatives, let's call it, as to whether or not our situation in terms of both council, senior staff, and CUPE would be something that they would be interested in assisting us with. Previously, when we were talking about hiring a variety of consultants, and that including consultant lists that were provided by the Inspector of Municipalities, one of the challenges was because there were let's call it the three groups involved, the individuals that were suggested by the Inspector of Municipalities they felt could deal, for example, with council and senior staff, but not CUPE because they didn't have necessarily that union experience. In my discussion with the individuals from the LRB, I explained the situation, I explained the groupings, if you want to call it that, and inquired with regards to their process, which surprisingly enough parallels the process that council was previously considering, the idea of interviews with all interested parties. After the interviews, a report and gathering related to the situations. Just as an example, in their written description, a mediator is appointed to meet with the parties to design a program that is specifically tailored to the parties' needs. That was effectively what the original idea, for example, of going to Rob Roycroft was. The mediator or team of mediators will facilitate the 1 to 3 day working session of representatives of both the employer and the workers, including the union staff. In terms of their process, as I said, it mirrors a lot what was previously discussed. The interesting thing about it, like I said, it's basically a service that they offer. There is a cost to it. In terms of their cost, it's $500 a day plus expenses is effectively what they charge. And in the discussion with the individual, they asked how many people are involved, and that because they do individual interviews, which takes some time. In terms of their manpower, they bring in 2 or 3 individuals. It's not just one individual to carry it out. And then those individuals create the report and the further follow-up in that regard. And that's, like I said, all included in the $500 a day plus expenses. So in talking to the individual, recognizing that they have people, for example, that come from Vancouver, there'd be some accommodation costs and some travel costs. But it's not unusual for something like this to cost a grand total of somewhere around about $2,500 to $3,000, as opposed to just the idea of creating the plan. Previously, the quote was about $20,000. In terms of their process itself, it also involves follow-up. They create a plan of action. In terms of those various action steps, there's an expectation that the participants will follow those up. So in the months following, the mediation division will periodically schedule follow-up meetings with representatives of the employer and including the union to monitor progress and to assist them in resolving any additional issues that arise. In terms of the follow-up, the individual talked about possibly like a 6-month follow-up and even a year follow-up in that regard. So it appeared to be a very positive type of approach with regards to it. One of the things is that in order to do it, there needs to be a joint written request of effectively the groups. So in this case here, it would be the employer, being council, let's say, senior staff collectively as a group, and also the union themselves. In talking to the union reps, they are familiar with the program. They are familiar, for example, with Mr. MacArthur. So they appeared to be at least verbally completely on side with that sort of process to address their concerns and their issues. But like I said, what we would need is a motion directing us to correspond with the groups requesting to prepare that joint written request so that the LRB will take it on. Councillor Paulson.
It sounds quite attractive. A couple questions, if I can. Mm-hmm. So that I just pulled it up on here, and I see that Grant MacArthur is based out of Vancouver.
Yes.
Is that where the team would potentially come from? So I'm just thinking in terms of minimizing the familiar relationships and getting that unbiased.
One of their, I did discuss with the individual, I'm sorry I didn't bring her name. One of the reasons quite often why they get involved is strictly because of that unbiased nature. Effectively what you're doing is you're contracting out to an organization, you're not contracting out to an individual. And so, for example, one of the challenges we ran into with Mr. Roycroft in terms of it is that quite often within the consultant world and that there's overlap.
It's a close-knit world.
Right. So like I said, in this case here, it's the LRB. So if there was anybody who had any sort of familiar relationship with any of the parties, they'd effectively be able to say, okay, this person here, no, but we've got these other people that are part of the program. So there's Grant MacArthur. There's more individuals.
Okay. Availability, any indication of how soon they could?
In terms of it, other than kind of August, the availability is there, June, July, September. I did speak with regards to the changeover of parties such as by-elections and staff replacements and things like that. And the individual didn't appear to be too concerned about making sure it was after. She was basically thinking that, well, the problems arose based on kind of who's there now, partially, and who's there now. So therefore, possibly the best value would be earlier rather than later. But I said, well, how about June? And we just said, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Councillor Haynes.
Well, it sounds really good. I think we all heard the concerns from the community about the price tag that this was starting to attract, and there was a lot of caution and concern expressed out there. So a $2,500 to $3,000 price tag to get independence, to get a government body that is totally removed from anyone that we would know personally, the follow-up, 6 months and 1 year, and being able to do it fairly quick, I think addresses a lot of the concerns. Mm-hmm. Like for $500 a day, how do you get anything better? I just, and no matter who we pick, it'll always have to be by willingness of each participant. It doesn't matter, you know. You could even pay someone $50,000, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to participate. So this to me makes the most sense to move this forward.
Councillor Coulson.
Sorry, I'm turning into the chatty one, but like on their cover sheet here, just for everyone here, it says, you know, each party, generally the REP proceeds as follows. That's the Relationship Enhancement Program. It says each party is asked what it could do to improve the relationship and what the other party should do to improve the relationship. Subsequently, union and employer representatives meet together to review the suggestions for improvement. Common objectives are established based on the should and could lists developed in step 1.
Yeah.
Sounds about like what we need. So.
Well, and then the part after that where it talks about the final step, the development of mutually agreed specific action steps to be taken to achieve each objectives.
Yeah.
Which, like I also mentioned, is the follow-up
Yeah.
future periods. So,
So in terms of a motion, do we have to ask for the letters that you mentioned before getting them on board?
they come on board effectively when they get the joint written request.
Okay.
That's what it is. So it's a case of arranging that joint written request. So, for example, contacting, I assume it would be Blaine that we contacted at QP 401.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll move this then. So I move that council requests written requests from council, staff, and union employees based on the Labor Relations Board Relationship Enhancement Program with the intention of moving forward to hire them on to facilitate our challenges.
Second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Hain. Any further discussion? Do note that this partially does address some action that's expected on the part of the ministry in relation to the letter.
Yeah, from the inspector of municipalities.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
So just, can we get just a bit more, because I assume we need to send a letter. You mentioned to council, a request requests from council, staff. Did you mean management staff?
Management staff.
Actually, I would, yeah. Because then you mentioned QP.
Yeah, there's 3 parties: council, management staff, and QP.
QP the entity or the employees?
I don't know how that process would work.
When it comes to the LRB, they say a written request of an employer and a union, so it'd be the entity.
Yeah, my experience in the past, and I've shared that with you, with the LRB, is that, you know, they work with employers who are having problems within their, their focus is bargaining unit workplaces, not non-union workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had the experience of where the employer, being the district, at the time where I worked, sent a letter with the union saying we wanted to assistance in getting the labor management committee up and running. And so it's common when there's a lot of grievances or there's a very difficult negotiation going on. And, so I just wanted to understand who we're asking and what we're asking of them. We don't have any grievances and we don't have negotiations that have started yet. So.
Yeah, it's still the organization. Yeah.
So maybe it would just be from the district then, and the QP, or
The 2 motions that we had active involve staff council relations. So 2 parties
that's my
identified,
point.
and then the third one
They
was.
won't touch staff council relations.
Well,
That's their.
actually, in discussions with them, because I did explain the whole situation, because the program itself, it does speak to employers and unions. Because of the nature of the situation, they were willing to look at it. Because she says she admitted it was a little unusual. in terms of it. But because of the nature of it, recognizing that there's great similarities in it, she said it makes sense to be able to look at it. If it's something like the city of Nanaimo, much larger organization, much broader organization, there's no way that they would do it in that respect there because of the small nature of the organization. She thought it was doable.
Because, Fred has 2 bargaining unit employees, and we have 2.5 downstairs. So we had talked about talking to the interim CEO when he starts about implementing labor management meetings, which we haven't had.
Yeah, which I discovered is required under...
Yet it's not in our contract, and so that was one of the things we were tagging as improved wording required. It says in the collective agreement that QP and the district entered into a few years ago that at the call of either party, so QP could have called for a labor management meeting at any time, and the district could have called for one at any time, but because we hadn't heard any complaints, we hadn't called for one, and I think it just was lack of familiarity, not on QP's part, but on our part. The code required that was every 2 months.
And that's the thing is I came across it from the LRB website. I'd looked at the relationship enhancement description after talking with the individual, and then I went to another link, and it popped up and said joint something meetings. And I said, well, that's interesting. And then it mentioned the legal requirement to do it. So, okay.
So I had the HR portfolio in Squamish, and so that was many years ago when they were getting the labor management committee up and running.
Yeah.
That's how we were,
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all's in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so that sets that in motion, like I said, deals with that part of the letter. Which moves us on to item 6A, the Sophie report, statement of financial information for 2014. Basically, the accumulation of information, including the financial statements of the district, as well as the remuneration exceeding $75,000, consolidated total of all remuneration, and payments greater than $25,000 to suppliers, and then a total. So effectively, there's a motion there on the agenda that Council and the Deputy Director of Financial Services approved the Sophie report for the year ending December 31st, 2014. Is that a motion? Or?
No, it's a question.
Okay.
Sorry, I got the old agenda here, page. Apologies. Where is it? It's on page 115 the other way. On the schedule of remuneration and expenses.
Okay, try 15, page 15.
15, thank you. The reconciling items down at the bottom. I wonder why that shows as a negative number when the 917,000 above it plus that number makes up the $1.03 million for total remuneration.
So it shouldn't have brackets.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
That's what it is, because it does include accruals and non-taxable benefits, which would not normally be part of the remuneration. So it should just be removal of those brackets.
Yeah.
And then well, actually,
No, that's right.
in addition, it's just a rounding.
Yeah.
There's a slight rounding error there too. It should be 10307.
7-2.
72.
Yeah.
Yes, that's 2. Yeah.
Okay. Trudy, did you find that on that
I see that.
page? Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Hain?
Just a comment, or maybe an observation. This year, the District of Lanceville is going to exceed $1 million in its payroll, which to me is quite significant, and it's really quite extraordinary for a small community of Lanceville, and a little disconcerting. So that is definitely something I think we need to keep an eye on. But yeah, we're over $1 million in payroll.
Payroll costs.
Payroll costs, yeah. Yeah, well, it's payroll.
Well, it's different between paying somebody versus the other costs that come along with it, like wage accruals, non-taxable benefits,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, it's still a big number.
Okay, still don't have a motion on the floor.
I move that council and the Deputy Director of Financial Services approve the Statement of Financial Information, SOFI, for the District of Lanceville for the year ended December 31st, 2014, with that amendment.
That's correct, it has
Or
amended.
is
As
correct.
amended.
Seconded by Councillor Coulson. Any further discussion on it? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, the appointment of the interim CAO. Council has sourced out an individual with a great deal of experience to act as our interim CAO. His name is Jimmy Diaz, and he did work for the District of North Cowichan for 19 years as CAO. Retired in 2010, I believe. Was made a free man of the city of District of North Cowichan. District of North Cowichan is bigger than, actually Duncan's smaller than people think. District of North Cowichan is pretty sizable in terms of it. He does take on occasional consulting jobs, and in that respect there he's willing to come to Lanceville and operate as our interim CAO until we conclude our search for a permanent CAO. In terms of timing, originally we expected to start on Tuesday, with the assuming pass motion tonight. I mentioned previously his availability itself, possibly on Friday, definitely on Monday. His wife is undergoing a health challenge, so from that aspect, that's the reason for the delay as opposed to being there tomorrow morning, sort of a thing. Like I said, a lot of experience, quite a relaxed individual in terms of it, but I think he'd be a good choice for an interim CAO.
I think he had 36 years of total service with him, something like that, 19 of which was
CAO. Correct. He's also involved in some charity things. There's a thing called Providence Farm down in the Cowichan area. He's on the board of that, as well as some other organizations. So it allows us to deal with that consideration. What we need from council is a motion to appoint him pursuant to bylaw number 36 in section 148 of the community charter to the position of Chief Administrative Officer. As well, we also need to appoint him as our approving officer, because that's currently a task undertaken by our current CEO. In terms of the effective date, certainly, if we made the effective date Monday morning, he's certainly still welcome to come on Friday and begin to familiarize himself with the district and its operations. But certainly the Monday, I believe, would be acceptable for an effective date.
So moved.
Okay. What date is Monday?
Monday is the 1st.
But sorry, I didn't record that as a motion. Could you restate? I've got the council appoints Jim Dias as interim CAO effective June 1st.
Pursuant to District Lanceville bylaw number 36 and section 148, I believe, of the community charter. Sorry, not 148. 147. 148 is the corporate officer. And as well, the local approving officer. Is that what it should be?
And as the deputy.
Oh, as Deputy Director of Financial Services.
Yeah. And deputy corporate administrator.
Yes, I guess we need that deputy as well. Yeah. We've seconded by Councillor Coulson. Discussion. Councillor Hain?
Well, we met him, and he's very knowledgeable, down to earth. I think he's going to be a great interim addition. I think he's going to provide good advice and leadership for us. I think it's a really good choice.
Agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
Same
sense.
feelings.
Okay. Do note that we also haven't processed the search for the appointment of the permanent CAO, again, part of the ministry's aspects. The advertisement closed last Wednesday in terms of it, so it's just a case of going through and then interviewing the potential candidates and that. So it is an interim position. The exact date that it'll end, not 100% sure. There is the ability for both parties to cancel the arrangement with, I believe it's 72 hours notice. Anything further? Okay, all's in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Public participation. Yes. Name and address, please.
Marjorie Stewart, 7516 Lansdale Road. My question is about this quasi-mediation process that you are pursuing. It's my understanding from what I heard that you are going to engage with the Labour Relations Board
Correct.
to do a mediation process both with your unionized staff and with your excluded management staff. Does that harmonize with the letter I read with the last agenda for municipal affairs, which I thought suggested that those two employee groups should be dealt with separately?
What the concern was originally with regards to the deputy inspector or the inspector of municipalities, they had provided a list of individuals to the council members of potential contractors, let's say. Their challenge with that list of contractors is those people didn't normally have the expertise to deal with union groups as well. And so what their advice essentially was is with those contractors, if they were engaged, we'd have to separately engage somebody else to deal with the management duty challenges. Whereas the LRB has dealt with management and union in terms of that. So that their expertise is broader than the individuals listed by the inspector.
Now, could I make a quick subsidiary question, which would be, at the present time, are there any grievances in process from your unionized employees?
I don't know if that's a question that we can directly answer.
Oh, the district's never received a grievance.
Actually,
It's always been a standard of management effectiveness to find out whether the union is pursuing a group of successful grievances. Then you turn to your management and you say something seems to be out of kilter here. But we don't have any grievances at all.
And I did make the individual at the LRB aware of that.
Thank you.
And when it came to it, one of the comments from the individual was recognizing the small nature of our union group within the office. She said in that respect there, it may or may not be an indication of whether or not there's problems. And she basically said that part of the aspect of the relationship enhancement program would be that if people raise issues as part of that interview process, one of the questions that could come out is, well, why isn't there a grievance? Not to say that there should be one, but there'd be an inquiry, well, if you have this issue, why is there not a union grievance in that respect?
And sorry, I should have expanded on that too, because the Labor Management Committee structure that's under the code and provided for in the collective agreement, that's for meetings that are not about grievances. So in any workplace, there's relationship issues that may not be grievable, and usually they go to the Labor Management Committee. In this case, it's going to go to another process, which could kick off a more active labor management process.
Further participation? Yes, name and address, please.
Karen Mostad, 7556 Lansdale Road. I have two questions about process. The first one is to do with the contact made by the mayor to the Labour Relations Board about with this individual. In the agenda, it's really clear as to what council had directed staff to do in regards to this issue, and really clear as to what council had directed the mayor to do in regards to this issue. And contacting the Labour Relations Board and speaking to an individual about this other process is nowhere there. So I'm curious as to how that came about and where the direction came from, how that came from council for you to be directed there. The other one I'm curious about is the appointment of the interim CAO. I'd like to know what the process was for that as well, please.
Okay. With regards to the first one, the LRB side of things, the suggestion of contacting the LRB actually came from the union individuals. They made me aware of the program itself. There's nothing to prevent any individual of council from doing their own research into specific items, and effectively that's what I did. And in that regard there, that's why I brought it to council tonight. Okay. Sorry, what was the second one?
About the CAO appointment, please.
Okay. With regards to the interim CAO or the permanent
The interim
CAO?
CAO, how did that process take place?
The interim CAO, during the time when council was still at...
6.
No.
5.
We started at 6.
No, 6 was just one day. It
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
at 6. Was it at 5?
5.
When council was at 5 individuals, when it came to the individual council members, we were tasked with identifying any possible individuals that we would have or know of or otherwise to be an interim CAO. This individual is in fact brought forward by Councillor Scott as in terms of an interim CAO. All of the individuals at that time, the 5 individuals, met with Mr. Diaz. And there was instruction from the group collectively, not the 3 people here, but the 5, that we engaged Mr. Diaz.
And that was the only person that was interviewed?
For an interim basis, yes. Because at that time, council had also started the advertising and search for the permanent CAO. So there's a recognition here that it's expected to be a relatively short period of time.
Thank you.
Councillor Coulson?
I'm sorry, if I may, there was a few others that were on I guess a short list as well, but Rob Roycroft, but his availability wasn't there.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was
But
another
Mr.
name.
Diaz
There
is
was
the only
another
one we
one.
met
It
with.
was the only one we direct contact with, yes. But there was a few others that were contemplated that weren't suitable for a variety of reasons.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Neil Smith, 7442 Sunbury Road, Nashville. I've been a resident since 1992, and my background is I have a doctorate in organization change and leadership. And one of the fundamentals, and I'm not bragging about that, it has nothing to do with who and what I am, but the fundamental aspect of what I learned in that 35 years is that when an organization gets into crisis, it looks ultimately at its opportunities to learn about its crisis. And if it becomes caught up in protocols that are officially mandated from the outside, it will never, ever have the opportunity to change from the inside. And I'm very emotional about this because I know many people who've been on council and have been alienated and pushed away and felt humiliated in the process of trying to contribute to a working, functioning group of people. Fundamental to any group and organization is respect, and respect shown to all people, to you, the mayor, to you, the councillors, and to everybody around the table. When respect is diminished, and when respect is not acknowledged, either formally or informally within the culture, people become alienated, they become frustrated, and they become disenchanted and become marginalized within that group. I'm sitting in a community now where nobody is willing to come forward to step into the shoes of those councillors that have just left. And that is, excuse me, can I finish and then carry on? I am deeply disturbed by that because I feel that people who came to the last election came with the idea and goal of contributing in a really participatory and very open and a protocol-driven environment. And it disturbs me at this point when I see the 3 of you remaining as a very tight core. It disturbs me in this regard. It disturbs me because of the fact that the 4 people who have left, I felt were people of integrity and wanted an open and a good climate, a good process. And without the acknowledgement and leadership of the fact that each person, not only the 4 who left, but each of you has contributed to the environment which we now find ourselves in. if there is not an openness, of even calling a 10% acknowledgement of the responsibility for the climate that's been created, it's not just with the union, it's with the community. It has to be hubris and arrogance that puts you in that position. I believe that when you get to that point where you say it's all everybody else, then the leadership that you're taking on is one, for me, that is a very embarrassing thing. And you know this is the first time I've spoken in public in this community about this issue. And I'm deeply disturbed about it, and I really hope that whatever happens from this point forward, there's some degree of openness to the idea that we all are responsible to create a climate of contribution, of collaboration, and a culture of some degree of participation within this community. And I'm really hoping, for that change, and it's not going to come because a formal consultant or somebody from the outside is hired to do it. It's going to come because there's a will to change and learn and become knowledgeable of how the practice of collaboration can work. So that's all I wanted to say. And with that, I really hope that there's some inward looking in the people that are in leadership at this point.
Further public participation. Louise, name and address for truth.
Yeah. Louise Niegrave, 6945 Leland Road, Lanceville. It's been a rough few weeks for the District of Lanceville, for staff, for council, and for residents. A few weeks ago, for those of you who were in attendance, we were given a very loud lesson in how the memo of staff should have been handled in the real world, in the opinion of one resident in attendance. We're now in the situation where 40% of senior managers and 67% of the duly elected councillors have resigned. In the real world where I live, I believe I have a pretty good understanding of how this type of situation would be handled in other organizations. It's a very serious situation and seems to indicate a complete failure of leadership. I expect all members of council to put the needs of the community ahead of their own. For the sake of staff, for the sake of residents, for the sake of the community, I respectfully request that the mayor exercise leadership and responsibility. Please do the honorable thing, say the buck stops here, and resign.
Mr. Brash.
My name is James Brash. I live at 7550 Fernmar Road, and I'm so happy that the one agenda councillors finally gave their notice and stepped aside so we can move on as a community.
Any additional public participation?
I think I agree, and I'm Mary Alward, 8085 Lorenzen Lane, that Colin Haim resign.
Any further public participation? Mr. Blood.
Brian Blood, 7075 Road. I think it's pretty clear to all of the staff who've departed. It's clear to the senior staff who resigned that you, Mr. Mayor, have been the behavior problem, and we know from a number of people that you have raised your voice inappropriately and left female staff crying in their offices. You know, I think that. Are you going to say? Can I ask you? Have you done that?
No.
You're lying.
No, hang on for a second. Hang on for a second. You know, Mr. Smith, I've dealt with you much over the years, and I appreciate what you were saying earlier. Okay. What I didn't get out of what you said was, that's the word I'm looking for, and it's a good thing, accusations. I haven't talked to you about what's gone on here at the council table, both privately or in public or anything other than that. You basically said as a group, go forward and learn from this. And as a group, that in my mind includes staff and council and the organization in that respect. A variety of other individuals, such as Mr. Blood, saying, I'm lying. Based on what, Mr. Blood? Based on?
Based on information from 3 former elected councillors and from 1 member of staff.
Okay, interesting. When it comes to the standpoint of what's going on at these tables, there's been references in letters to angry, red-faced men yelling uncontrollably at staff. There's been references to residents leaping from their seats, pointing their fingers and yelling at staff. Well, with respect, in terms of it, one of the aspects or one of the items that was asked for when this all started was particulars. Because in order to move forward, people have to know what the incidents were, understand what the incidents were. For example, people make reference to an individual talking about, in the real world, this is what would happen at one of the meetings. I may be wrong, I believe that was the April the 9th meeting. The memo had been already issued by the 4 council members out to the community prior to that date. So to say because of that, this issue is because of that incident, the timing's wrong. For people to say that we didn't take it seriously or I didn't take it seriously, as soon as we received that staff memo, particulars were asked for. People criticized, an individual that was on council criticized that why wasn't it dealt with right away? The same individual had sent an email to all of council and staff asking it to be put on an open agenda a month from then. Not right away, a month from then. And yet that individual then criticizes for it not being dealt with immediately. There's a variety of opinions that have been created by listening to specific individuals. And with regards to issues, there's multiple parties involved with these issues. And so therefore, people should be listening to all people involved with those issues, rather than making conclusions that people should resign based on listening to one side of a story in that regard. So, people sit there and they judge based on what they've heard from a select group of people. What I'm asking for is, when it comes to this, listen to what everybody has to say. Now, one of the challenges is we as councillors, we can't tell you what happened in an in-camera meeting. We can release minutes and we can release reports. But the aspect of yelling in that regard, I don't yell when it comes to it, Mr. Blood. Am I passionate about some things? You bet. Do I yell? I don't do that.
Well, it's all videotaped.
Take a look at the tapes, or the recordings. We shouldn't use the word tape anymore.
Yeah.
That's okay. Take a look at the recordings, in terms of even the individual that was referred to on April the 9th, uncontrolled. Well, the individual was asked 3 times. The individual began to become specific with regards to it. And I asked him to please stay away from specific individuals. So then he got down to a specific group, which in a small organization, that specific group is almost like identifying the individuals. And he began to continue, and for a 3rd time, I asked him to stop, and the individual did stop. So, like I said, the representation was that this person was uncontrolled. No. I mean, basically, until somebody says something, you can't tell them to stop. So the individual says something, you ask them to stop. If he's passionate, you ask them to stop. So when it comes to that aspect there, recognize that in these sort of situations, there's 2 sides to a story.
Jamie Driver, 7075 Collette Road. I've been in Lansville for 35 years. I'm relatively a newcomer. But I want to say that what I'm really perturbed by is all the empty seats. A lot of empty seats here, Mr. Mayor. A lot of empty seats. And we can't judge, we can't know what's actually going on in the background. We hear rumors, we have ideas, we have speculation, but we don't know. And we're reliant upon people to give us some kind of information about that, and then to form in our minds a belief about your legitimacy. To continue doing what you're doing right now. And I'm not passing judgment, but it's not there. It simply isn't there. We don't know what's going on. We may never know what's going on, but it's not good enough. This is a small town. We're not very many people. We have to get along. And whatever's going on here, and it had to be serious to lose all these seats. It's not good enough.
And Jeannie, I don't disagree with what you said when it comes to that. The fact that there's empty chairs here, is
Hard-working people.
is not, well, regardless of who's in a chair, the fact that there's a variety of empty chairs here is not a constructive way to move forward. Now, when it comes to the idea of size of council, for example, Qualicum has a council of 5, and they get.
This is the
small.
public participation section. The
I
mayor and council have had their say.
Excuse me.
It's time for the public to have theirs, and for you
Excuse
guys
me,
to listen
Ms.
respectfully.
Get a chance to respond, thank you.
I'm responding
To a question.
So in terms of the aspect of the empty chairs, yeah, it is not a good thing. One of the considerations with regards to making decisions as a council is having the participation of all those individuals, a number of individuals, so you can hear different views.
But we don't get to hear that, sir. That's my point.
Yep.
All that's really going on here, we have not heard.
No,
And maybe we don't get to
and-
hear it. I get that. I totally get that. I've come to the meetings, we haven't heard it.
Yeah.
Fine. But it's gone on, and it was serious enough that these people had quit.
No,
They walked away, they said, this is too much, we're not taking this anymore.
And
And that tells us whatever was really going on is a big deal.
Okay,
It tells you, it doesn't tell
And
me
hang on,
that.
excuse
Well, we don't know.
excuse me. And with respect to that side of things, the go through the minutes of the meetings, the publicly accessible minutes. Let's say.
But that's not the important thing.
No, but hang on, it is. Because when it comes to the operation of the council, there's a record, for example, of motions made of points of order and those sorts of things. Go through those minutes and see if those points of order motions exist. At which point people say, well, how about the in-camera meetings? And those sorts of things. So if they don't see it in the public meetings, they believe it must be happening in in-camera meetings. Well, in that regard there, the ability to release those minutes is a vote of council in that regards. And those are documented the same way. Motions, that sort of an aspect, including points of order.
With all due respect, sir, there are municipal councils all across this entire country. This is the only one people are phoning me from 5 other provinces saying, what the heck is going on in Westville? This situation is not common. This is different.
I don't
And
disagree.
it needs to be fixed. I don't know how we get it fixed.
I agree.
Despite their well-meaning intentions here, and this camaraderie, and this, let's all vote together, 1, 2, 3, ha, ha, ha. It's not enough.
No.
It's not enough.
Okay. First time. Glenda, name and address for truth.
Glenda Barr, 6860 Wayne Place. I believe that the level of dysfunction in Lanceville is unprecedented, and I don't know how this council can continue at all. I think we should get full value for our by-election, and the whole council should resign and have a new election. Let's start again.
Carol Morgan, 6961 Landing Road. I've been a resident in Lanceville since 1976. So there's been many changes and challenges that have occurred. And this to me, I totally agree with Jamie, is absolutely embarrassing to think that the leadership that is being exhibited in this room right now from mayor and council does not even acknowledge that there is a problem. And there is a problem. Obviously there's a problem. I'm sure it's a lot more than what I am aware of, but it comes down to leadership, and I'm not seeing any. And I agree with Glenda. Let's have an election for everybody. Yeah. And let's get
Yes.
Natasha Friesen, 7956 Northland Drive. So one of the things that you guys mentioned tonight is that you're going to bring in basically sort of, maybe I have the word wrong, a mediator. Is a mediator? Is that mediator going to be speaking to the staff and the counselors who have left? So they'll be speaking to everyone, so not just the ones who are left, but everyone. So is there a way from like a non-biased mediator for a report to go out to the community from them, from what they find from this? You know, because we keep talking about bias and rumors and, you know, whatever it is, but you guys have selected somebody who you see as being non-biased, and so that we have a sense what is their findings in the end. I just think that if we're paying for it as a community, we also get to see what the results of that is.
The only challenge on that, in terms of it, just recognizing that it does involve employees, I'm not sure what they can release in relation to an employee.
Can employees waive that if they want the community to be able to see? I mean, you guys are public representatives, but like the employees, John?
Sorry, to answer that, we can't authorize the release of any personal employment records. And I spoke to that at the last meeting. Letters of resignation, performance reviews, whatever, as a council, we're not allowed to release those. It's a breach of FIPA, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. There is a clause in FIPA, though, that says that those documents can be released if the employee authorizes the release.
Okay.
So, absolutely.
So there is a possibility for us then to get to see the results of this, not just the
And I think that is absolutely necessary if the employees will authorize the release of that.
But it has to be all of the employees.
Oh, I'm fine with it.
It has to be unanimous.
No,
I think so.
Don't mean to correct you, but if it's
because a private settlement, if it has a no disclosure clause, we'll never see it.
okay, but we're just talking about the Privacy Act, not contractual aspects. If my interpretation is if it relates to the actions or incidents related to one employee, that the one employee could waive their rights under the Privacy Act. If it's something that relates more broadly, then probably no, it probably would require each individual to sign off. So if you take a employee record of some sort that relates to 3 employees, you need the individual approval of each of those to release it. So,
what about the counselors who have stepped down?
in what respect?
That resigned. Like when the report comes back in, are they allowed, in a sense, privacy because they were public figures in a public position?
The section that John was referring to is privacy specific to employees.
Yeah.
And I believe under those acts, council members are not employees.
So that we could hear then possibly from the mediator the perspective then of the former counselors as well as yourselves. So that we're getting, because the complaint goes out that we're getting a one-sided, whether it's, the people who are left or the people who are still here. So how do we get that unbiased opinion?
Yeah. Because like I said, members of council are not, in my understanding, technically employees to the same extent, and they wouldn't come into that same section. Whether or not there's some other aspect of the Privacy Act, I haven't looked at. Trudy, are you aware how the...
Whether you're an employee or not is moot.
Well, but there is a section specific to employees.
Yeah, every person in the province has protection of their personal information. And it's either under FIPA if they're in a private workplace, and it's under FOIPA if they're in a public body, which is like school boards, local government. So the personal information is always protected by authorization.
Okay. So there's public participation. There was another hand back there.
Hi, John Dunn, 7090 Winslow Road. I'm a 43-year resident of Lanceville. I've seen, like Carol Ellison said there, many changes in the village. Sorry, Carol. I couldn't say more succinctly than my friend here, even though I don't really know him. And I'd like to just offer my support for the motions. And I'd like to say that your arrogance as a council at present is astounding. And I would like to call for your resignation, all 3 of you. because it's just...
There was another hand. Yes.
I'm Carolyn Stewart, 7944 Lanceville Road, and I, like you, John, I'm here on a grandmother's clause. I've been here for over 40 years, raised my children, sat in this very building and did a lot of Parks and Recreation Commission things. I just want to say we sat on folding chairs. We didn't have all this fanciness, and we weren't paid. The other concerns I have tonight are, someone has said the timing is wrong for what's going on, and I feel the timing is wrong. I feel something needs to be done very quickly to settle this village, and if that means everybody resign and we start again. I want to know, as just a taxpayer from down the beach, what recourse do I have against the part of the ministry that has said that this council of 3 who are grinning over passing these funny little motions, because there's only 3 of you here, what recourse do I have? The minister has said, you have control to run my life. I disagree.
With regards to recourse, I'm not sure, but correspondence would either be delivered to the inspector municipalities or possibly the minister.
And will there be a public meeting? I mean, is that something that would work? People are asking for where we can bring our grievances and where we can find out about the people that have left and a few other things.
Why bother with the niceties? Just get a rope.
Yeah?
Al,
I said, why bother with the niceties? Get a rope.
Al, please. Like I said, with respect to its correspondence to go to the inspector municipalities in Victoria and/or.
But we all know how far that is, right?
Well, that's up to them. They're technically, the municipality is technically a child of the ministry. Okay.
And I don't know if there's like recall opportunities if you're interested in pursuing that. I don't think that applies to municipal levels.
Recall.
Like recall
avenues. The provincial MLA side of things has recall.
Okay.
Mr. Halliwell, name and address for 2, please.
786 Nyquist Terrace. There's 3 left because 4 quit. I saw them all quit. Maybe is there a recourse that we have that we can charge them the 20 grand that is going to cost us thereabouts, the by-election? Where's the backbone of the people? Where's the debate ongoing? Thanks for standing there and supporting us.
Mr. Hazeltine, name and address, please.
Peter Hazeltine, 7088 Huddlestone. I'm as upset as anybody here. I'm embarrassed by what's going on, but at the same time, I didn't vote for anybody because they were nice or I liked them. I voted for people who articulated an election platform and promised to me that they were going to stick it out and work towards getting it done. Then, it's not easy. You've got conflicting issues all the time. Can you imagine if a jury room debating somebody's life, and people could just, you know what, this is too tough, I'm going to walk out. Yeah. I don't say that these are the perfect people, but they are still here, as John said, and I appreciate them working to get the business of the village done. This pisses me off, that we're talking about all this and it's going on and on and on, and the village business is being ignored.
Yeah.
I think there is a level of...
Could you make sure Trudy hears name?
Oh, sorry, Trudy.
Yeah.
Mary Howard, 85 Lorenzen Lane. The issue here, I think, is trust. And Colin, honestly, the trust is gone. And from many, many people here, the trust, the way things have been handled, not working on settling the staff issues right away, basically just asking for specifics. You didn't accept that letter at all at first, and you basically disregarded it as far as I can see, because nothing was ever done with that, okay. And still there is nothing done.
Okay. First off, in terms of chronology, so the letter comes out, memo goes to staff, asking for specifics, not for myself, but for council in that regard. Whether or not to take action on that letter and how to take action on that letter is a council issue. It is brought to council, and it's up to council to decide. One of the sheer ironies of all this is, if I had ordered, okay, council, we are doing this, I suspect you would be sitting there in the same chair criticizing me for being a dictator.
No, I'm
and so,
not.
hang on. Decisions are made by council. The community is led by a council of 7.
With one vote each.
Yes.
With one vote each, thank you. When it comes to the aspect of moving council forward, it's up to 7 people.
And there were 7 people that voted on a process to be done to correct the disruption that has happened. That was not followed.
Which process are you
The
speaking
process was you were to email the staff, email the councillors, and email the ministry. You did not do that, did you? Did you?
Hang on.
Did you do what was passed?
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Okay.
Yes or no?
With regards to that motion specifically?
No. And why not?
Because the ministry contacted me asking for a conference call at the same time.
Well, why did you not let the staff know and the councillors know that was the case? You didn't, did you?
I did. And then with regards to it, the reason why council directed me to do that was to get a list of individuals from the ministry as to who council could retain to deal with that on a consultant basis. And an interesting thing was told to me last week, that an individual from council contacted the inspector of municipalities and told them that I never provided that list of individuals to council.
But you did.
And right after I was told that by the ministry, I sent them a copy of the email that I had sent to all of council with all those names in there. And so, in terms of it, recognizing that we are dealing with the ministry, when the Deputy Inspector of Municipalities phones and says, I want a conference call with you and, I can't remember what Michelle Dan's, one of the other people in his office, I take that call. And in that respect there, going forward, as I said, they then provided me with a list of 10 names, which I think there was 10, which I then passed on to council. Okay?
How many did we have at council at that time?
Sorry?
How many did we have at council at that time?
5.
Was there 5 at that time? Was it subsequent to?
So how much time was that between the passing of the motion to you sending that email out? What was the time frame
No,
there?
the important thing is
what was the time frame?
The time frame between the time they gave me the list of the individuals and when I passed it over to council. And in that respect there, what happened was, and I'm guessing here again on the dates, late on the 28th of April, they sent me the list of 10 people. And then with respect to that, I passed it on to council in the morning of the 30th. The difference being it was tax time. There, an email came up, I was dealing with clients the next day, and then I passed it on to them.
So this was passed on the meeting of April the 7th, correct?
9.
Something
No,
like
actually it was after that.
Hang on. I think we've got it here.
Later.
April the 20th was the motion.
Yeah.
In terms of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in terms, so that would have been a Monday. The request had come in with regards to the conference call. I had the conference call with Michelle Dan and Gary Paget of the inspector's office. Michelle Dan provided me with that list of individuals on April the 28th. And then, like I said, I passed it on to council on April the 30th.
Well, it's nice at least we know now. We did not know any of that prior.
And you didn't ask me any questions prior.
Well, you know, I think communication from this council, we don't get any more updates in the mail or haven't for a while. All this process, there's so much uncertainty in the community. Why are you not communicating somehow? There's lots of people that can't come to meetings. You should be communicating somehow positive things to the community through the mail. Why are you not doing that? I've seen nothing and other people have seen nothing.
And the only community update that didn't go out was the May one, I believe.
Yes.
Trudy, if I got that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's me.
Yeah.
It was only
I
Ms.
believe.
Swan.
I was away, but I understand there's a draft and council asked for it. So
Yeah.
you guys managed communications.
Yes. So,
Anyway.
okay. First time.
Sorry, if I can just jump in and clarify, it was 8 individuals. I pulled the list up.
Oh, 8 individuals on the list.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
April 30th was the date.
First time.
Yes,
Name and address for
Tracy Phillips, 7550 Carthage Road West. So just a clarification, so the 20,000, so the $20,000 that you have on here, that's for the by-election. Is that for the councilors that need to be replaced?
Yes.
Okay, so it's $20,000 for that. It's approximately $4,000 for mediation. What about legal fees with the previous employees that we have? Like, as a taxpayer, what am I looking at as far as expenses when this is all said and done? Because I still am not happy with what I see. This was quite insulting as a taxpayer.
Yeah.
And I think that it all stems back to leadership. At some point, you can't expect us as taxpayers to keep paying for all these bills for a service that is not going well. Like, this is not working. So what are the legal fees that we're at so far for the issues that we're having with the employees that are no longer? Because we're talking about possible suing. I heard someone mention that, so.
Okay. Trudy, yeah, I don't believe that's something that we can share procedurally.
But it is going to cost me?
And you can't share it.
Well, see, and that's part of the problem. I can't share with you a yes or a no. Trudy, am I correct on that? Sorry?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
You know,
But it's not free. Like, it's going to cost me eventually.
If there is a cost.
So I've elected you. Now I'm paying for all the problems, and I'm still not satisfied. So whether you talk about counselors needing to be replaced, we have staff that we have to replace, so there's hiring that has to go on, advertising. This is all above and beyond what was originally in the budget. This all comes down to leadership. You have to own it. You really do.
Councillor Coulson?
Just a fact for consideration. Since 2011, there's been 2 staff turnovers every year. 2011, 2 people. 2012, 2 people. 2013, 2 people. 2014, 2 people. 2015, 2 people. Some years it's the same position, rolling over twice. But just for your information, the issue of 2 people leaving, and I'm not trying to downplay the issues that have been raised and have been raised recently, but turnover is not unusual for us.
Yes, but now we're going into mediation, and now we're running into legal fees.
Yep.
You guys have to own it.
Well, sorry if I can ask, what could we do that would make you happy other than resigning?
When 6 people
Tonight
leave,
we passed a motion to hire a facilitator or mediator for $500 a day, total cost of around $2,500 versus $20,000 for the facilitator we were first having to hire because everyone was in conflict. As soon as 4 councillors sent out that mail, that created a legal quagmire because council couldn't do anything. 4 that signed it had a conflict. The 3 that weren't on that list by exclusion are now in a conflict. So whether or not I supported the letter or didn't, no one knows what my views were on it, but by that act, I'm now in conflict. And we can't do anything when you're in a conflict of interest.
but
And
I
so
completely,
if I can keep rambling. So we had the first facilitator to be hired for $20,000 that was going to then hire the next facilitators in order to achieve some level of unbiasedness. And so we now have 20,000 here, potentially 20,000 here, 20,000 here, if not more. And we were looking at upwards of $100,000 for that issue.
but again, it's not even proven to be unbiased because we could possibly never see the outcome.
I know.
But yet I'm paying for it.
And the original motions too, you might have never seen the outcome.
Yeah.
Because if the named individuals choose not to release it, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah,
It's
but
not a
people
question
don't-
of me making a decision and leadership and saying, yeah, I think that should be released. I can't. I lose my house.
I know, when people don't leave when things are going well. Like, it takes a while for people to jump. Like, you know, I love what the doctor was talking about, the expert.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're an expert in this. This is clearly your field.
I consult with organizations and
Right,
companies. And,
so-
yeah, this is as bad as it gets.
Right.
First times.
Martin Spencer, 7844 Shangri-La Road. Yeah, we obviously don't know the details of what went on, but it is very clear, as Neil said, that the issue here is leadership and accepting responsibility. And in the interviews, Mr. Mayor, that you did with the media, all I can see is it's not me. When 4 out of 7 resigned, it's sort of everyone's on step with Johnny. Just to say, oh, it must be them, to not at least say, well, let's look at it, to at least say it might have something to do with it. It seems to show unbelievable hubris.
Well,
I would agree with the calls for your resignation and running into the next election.
In terms of, for example, the resignation letters, various references, no specifics, that sort of thing. And I'm not alone in going, well, why? In that respect. If it had been a case where a council had been working together for a while, there'd been the yelling and screaming that people believe that occurred, which didn't. If there'd been a variety of motions, points of order, those sorts of things, okay, you could say, okay, this is understandable. So it's not a question necessarily of responsibility, etc. But when it comes to the standpoint of the individuals that are involved and individuals out in the public that have seen these things, trying to figure out what it is in that regard. Councillor Savage, in his discussion the other day, gave the most specifics of anybody, and he went back to the election, is what he went back to in his comments. And so in that respect, they're trying to identify the challenges.
So you honestly can't see that it could be anything to do with you. I mean, what you said, people who are apparently agreeing with you are saying they are accusing the 4 councillors of dereliction of duty. I mean, Graham Savage, who you just mentioned, that was the key one that lost the quorum. I know he agonized over that. He's not someone who's used to cutting and running. He's been in many, many boards. He's been in government. He's been doing this for 40 years. He didn't take that lightly. So it's a little much for people to say, oh, they should have stuck it out. I just would like to see you say, well, this might have had something to do with your leadership.
Well, let's put it this way. I haven't said one way or another, because in terms of it, the description, the specifics in that respect haven't been given. And there's a hope that part of the process, for example, with the LRB side of things, will give those specifics. And when it comes to the standpoint of the senior staff side, there's also additional interactions there with QB and trying to understand that and the reasons for those resignations as well. And it's those things where people jump to a conclusion because of lack of information. And
so you're saying this is a complete mystery to you. You have no idea how this could possibly have happened.
Well,
I find that really puzzling, profoundly puzzling.
Well, and in terms of it, yeah, it is puzzling. Bizarre is another word that gets used, and that sort of thing. And so there's some hope that after this process, that there will be some light in that respect. Second time is Mr. Hazelton first.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like an apologist for Colin, which I'm not. I'm very, very angry about this, but we keep talking about leadership. What about the leadership responsibilities of the 4 who left? Yeah. They had a responsibility. They said that they were going to work. And you know what else? There was 4 of them. They had a majority if they wanted to rag on him.
Oh, yeah.
It shows how toxic it must have been for them to resign.
They walked away from the heat.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, right.
Second time, Louise.
Louise Negrid, Leland Road. This is the first council I've seen, and I've attended council meetings for quite a number of years. During council meetings, I get it. The public has to sit quietly, no matter how passionately we feel about something, no matter how much we may disagree with the decisions of council. We have to sit quietly, and no matter what we think, we're not allowed to talk while you guys make your decisions, even if we disagree vehemently. This is the public participation section. And yet, I see the mayor using this as a soapbox to preach at us. And
you're asking for
answers.
No, we're not all asking
Actually,
for
excuse
answers.
me.
For people that ask questions, I'm fine with you answering the questions. but you're talking back to people and you're challenging them. And I find that a form of bullying and intimidation that will intimidate a lot of people that don't want to talk to you, or that don't want to be challenged, that have something to say. And I feel the public participation section, and it certainly was in previous councils, is a chance for the public to have a chance to voice their views, not for a chance to you to preach at us. And I don't think that behavior should be tolerated.
Okay, you're going to consider this preaching then?
I will. I'm not asking for a comment from you. I'm telling you how I feel.
Okay, but under public participation, first off, it's for questions and comments. And second of all, that bullying and harassment policy and legislation also applies to the action this way. So when it comes to the standpoint of points that have been raised in public meetings supposedly, where residents have been standing up yelling uncontrollably at people, there's also the consideration for the three remaining individuals here, as has been saying, are willing to sit here and deal with this, because from the standpoint of coming this way, individuals coming up making comments such as lying, things like that, that is bullying and harassment as well. So people kind of pick and choose when they're going to decide whether or not bullying and harassment exists, and they believe it's a one-way item. I'll share with you the aspect of when people have said in the meeting, there was those statements about residents standing up, yelling uncontrollably. It wasn't a case where I just went, no, that didn't occur. It's a case of thinking back and saying, what incident are they talking about? What is it that they're talking about that occurred such to the level where people felt bullied and harassed? And so when it comes to that consideration, recognition that everybody's interpretation is different, that's one of the reasons for asking for specifics, so that people don't go on, and I'm going to use this word, a witch hunt, based on the idea of their individual interpretation of it. And so it can be a sharing of ideas and a sharing of an understanding, which is similar to what Mr. Smith there was talking about in terms of learning going forward and figuring out where is the line for each of the individual people. So you may call that preaching, you may call it soapboxing, but like I said, we deserve the same consideration that you as individuals are requesting for the 4 individuals that have left and the senior staff.
I haven't requested anything for the 4 individuals that left. I've requested that you be quiet and let the public speak.
Okay. If I understand correctly, all 4 of the dissenters / quitters had been on council before and had been councillors with you as the mayor?
Councillor Savage had not. And Councillor Milbank had not either.
Correct.
She was second term by the time she got here.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they all knew what they were getting into when they saw you as mayor.
I would suspect. Yeah.
They didn't know what they needed to be doing.
Mr. Hallowell.
Despite the accusations that you've taken in this meeting in public participation, I admire your leadership and your cool-headedness. And that's what we need in this community, not people grandstanding and beating the table over there, the desk, as that lady's husband did when he resigned.
No references to
okay. But all these years, I've always admired you and Denise. You've been honest, straightforward. You've got broad shoulders because you've taken a lot of very thick skin, despite from a lot of, I don't know, people with long knives, and the cavalry comes out. They did it with Becker, and the same group are coming out now.
Okay, let's...
Thank you very much. I think we're kind of...
I think Al's just the last.
I'm not sure Al, you've spoken yet, so name and address, please.
Al Dumichel, 6784 Harwood Drive. And I guess I have a question, and then I'll have a comment that'll follow the question, I guess. So the question is actually to all 3 members of council. And I'd appreciate if you would provide an individual answer. So the question is, quite simply, is have you received your booster vaccination shot for resinitis?
I don't even know what it is.
Resignationitis. Resignationitis.
Oh, resignationitis.
Yes, resignationitis.
Yes.
Naturally immune? I don't know how to answer that question.
I'm not leaving.
I'm not resigning.
Okay. Now, notwithstanding current room temperature, I think it was Edmund Burke that said back in the 18th century, for evil to succeed, it requires only that good men and women do nothing. And so I think it's now time for people in the community that fit that description to start stepping up. And given, there's been mention here tonight of trust, for me in terms of if the overseer for the government of BC, which is the minister from whom you receive correspondence, has expressed confidence in this council that's standing and sitting before us, that's good enough for me.
Here, here.
Thank you.
The people, I've heard some theories being advanced here tonight, and I've heard them elsewhere, but certainly here in terms of tonight, I've heard some theories being advanced, and I might as well make a contribution to the theory pool, to the gene pool, if you will.
We need to address the council.
Yeah. So we can hear you.
You're addressing the council, not the public.
Have you missed anything I've said so far?
No. Gene pool.
Gene pool, thank you. So, in terms of the contribution to the gene pool, in terms of theories, if you will, let me advance one. Now, I see that in today's newspaper, Lantsville is left without functioning government. That was this morning's headlines. I have a suggestion for tomorrow's headline. Coup fails. Because what we have been witnessing in this community for the last 6 months is a concerted effort, a deliberate effort to undermine and sabotage the functioning of this governing body. Unadulterated, blatant, innuendos, gossip, rumors, it can go on, the list can go on. And I think that it needs to come to an end. And to suggest that the 4 empty seats are due to the efforts or lack of efforts by the 3 of you is, to me, a bit specious. If anything, they have left because they failed in their mission.
Yes.
To paralyze and bring down this government at this local level. That's why they're frustrated. And that's why they left, because they failed. Now, the good citizens of Lantsville in November had an election. They made a verdict. They made a decision. You people didn't vote that many times for yourselves. There was maybe some people in this room who voted for you, and there's, I guess, a lot more people out there in the streets that did. So you didn't self-appoint yourself or self-anoint yourself. You were chosen by the people. Likewise, these 4 also were chosen. But they then went on a kamikaze mission of the self-destruction in their attempt to bring you down. So it is unfortunate that that type of effort went on. And in the aspect of fellow comments I heard from fellow participants tonight about leadership, self-control, and self-regulation, I would suggest to since I'm speaking to the council, that the good residents of Lantsville exercise some self-regulation, some self-control, and some effort in terms of finding out what is going on and then doing something about it. Anybody in this room can just, whether you agree with me or not, can just stop and inwardly reflect. We've had a call for inward reflection. Inwardly reflect on what it is that you're acting upon.
Is it factual? You may have been told it. You may have been told by one person. You may have been told by more than one person. But is it factual? Get the facts. And there's lots of people around that can help in that regard. I've actually heard it been suggested that you attempted to provide facts tonight, and you were told that's not your role. I think it is. And so I'm hoping that as we move forward, first of all, that the three of you stand or sit in council and continue your leadership for this community, and that I'm hoping that the good citizens of Lanceville will give you somebody to work with in the upcoming months. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional public participation? Okay. Hearing none, we need a motion to go on camera.
So moved.
We got to read it out. Council, right there.
I move the council closes.
Hang on for a second, okay? Did you wait for a second?
I move the council closes the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90/1A, C, and I of the Community Charter for the purpose of considering personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or as a position appointed by the municipality, labor or other employee relations, and the receipt of including communications necessary for that purpose.
Second by Councillor Hain. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for your comments.